Scotland, but a ridge of high pressure allows for a drier, finer start for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, with some sunny spells once again. But we will start to see the cloud thickening up from the southwest, with outbreaks of rain eventually arriving, turning breezier as well. But in amongst all of this, we have milder air sweeping its way in, so temperatures will be on the rise as we head towards the middle part of the week, seeing mid-teens for some of us as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right.
Growth.
And then people, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government, way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
You're watching and listening to GB News with me, Sam Francis. It's just gone 7 o'clock, and we start this hour with the latest news in the Hamas-Israel conflict. In a call this evening, the US President has urged the Israeli Prime Minister to halt his planned invasion of the Gazan city of Rafah. Joe Biden said that it shouldn't go ahead without a credible plan in place to protect the 1 million people seeking shelter there. It follows Biden's recent comment that Israel's response in Gaza is, he said, over the top. Meanwhile, here in the UK, the government is also warning that there could be catastrophic consequences for civilians if an assault on Rafah goes ahead. However, the Israeli Prime Minister has told reporters today that enough of the 132 remaining hostages are alive to warrant a ground offensive. Well, earlier tanks and bulldozers, you can see there if you're watching on TV, were seen operating along the Israel-Gaza border. And that comes after at least 44 people, including several children, died yesterday in what the Palestinians claim was an Israeli airstrike. Here in the UK, the family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey have today been holding a vigil to mark the first anniversary of her death. Earlier, I spoke to our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper, who was at that gathering.
Well, 1 year on from the tragic death of Brianna Ghey, hundreds of people have gathered here in Warrington for a vigil in her memory. We heard from several of Brianna's friends who spoke, bringing tears to the eyes of the crowd as they remembered their friend. We also heard from the head teacher at Brianna's school. We finally heard from Brianna's mother, Esther, who spoke emotionally and emotively about the loss of her daughter. Here's what she had to say.
Brianna was an amazing, unique and joyful teenager. I will be forever thankful that I was lucky enough to spend 16 years with her. She taught me so much and gave me so much happiness and love. If there's one piece of advice that I can give to any parent, it would be to hug your children tight and never stop telling them that you love them.
In other news, 124 migrants crossed the English Channel on Saturday in 3 small boats. That's according to new Home Office figures out today. The latest arrivals bring the total for this year so far to just over 1,500. That's down from the 2,072 at this time last year, but up on the figure in 2022. Apart from the latest crossings, small boats had not been intercepted since the 31st of January. The Prime Minister, you'll remember, has made stopping the boats a key pledge of his leadership as the country approaches the general election. The departure of the Royal Navy aircraft carrier, HMS Prince of Wales, was cancelled this afternoon at the last minute. It was about to set sail to replace its sister ship, which was also forced to cancel its deployment due to an issue with the propeller. The £3 billion vessel was to take over leading the largest NATO exercise since the Cold War. However, despite people lining the walls of Portsmouth Harbour to watch the 65,000-tonne warship set sail, it failed to leave the jetty. And finally, the King has attended church in Sandringham this morning, the first time since his cancer diagnosis. His Majesty was seen walking alongside Queen Camilla this morning. That's after last night thanking the nation for their overwhelming support in his first public message since the diagnosis announcement. The monarch said such kind thoughts are of great comfort and encouragement to him. Buckingham Palace have said that he is facing a form of cancer, but that it's unrelated to his recent prostate treatment. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen if you're watching on television, or if you're listening on radio, go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The Royal Society of Literature fails to defend free speech. Tucker Carlson interviews Vladimir Putin, and we ask that age-old question, should airlines weigh their plumper passengers? This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And, of course, we're going to have the latest from those lovable culture warriors. You know the ones I mean. Activists of every persuasion who somehow believe that throwing insults and lying about people is going to persuade them to change their minds. Well, good luck with that. Anyway, coming up on the show tonight, Professor Jo Phoenix will be here to tell us about the significance of her success in a gender-critical discrimination case against the Open University. And how would a potential Labour government handle the conflict between women's rights and the demands of trans activists? Well, Joan Smith will be here to discuss that. And Shara Ali will be here to tell us about how a court found that he was discriminated against by the Green Party over his gender-critical beliefs. And, of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be here answering questions from this rather lovely studio audience. And my comedian guests this evening are Bruce Devlin and Josh Howie. You've been filming some kind of major series
in the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
Yeah, the guys who made Narcos. and I was playing an American.
Oh, yeah, and you've got the accent down pat, right?
Yeehaw!
Yeah, that's why you got the role.
The big bucks.
Because of that kind of thing. What about you? What have you been doing this week, Bruce?
I've been filming a reboot to Take the High Road in Scotland.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that.
Yes.
I think it's about time.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's go straight to our audience because they are itching to ask some questions. Our first one comes from Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Andrew. Despite having an activist president, do you think the Royal Society of Literature doesn't do enough to defend free speech?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. The Royal Society of Literature, there was a piece this week in the Times, I believe it was, which talked about how a number of fellows of the Royal Society of Literature and also former presidents were questioning whether the charity is really backing freedom of expression. And actually, Marina Warner, who's a former president, actually said explicitly they didn't want to put out a statement when it came to the attack on Salman Rushdie because they didn't want to cause offence. Similarly, with the internet pile-on on Kate Clancy, the poet Kate Clancy, who wrote a brilliant piece, by the way, about how her book was accused of racism and ableism, when, of course, that wasn't the case. This kind of thing is, I think we've got to get to the grips of this. The current president of the Royal Society of Literature is Bernardine Everasto, wrote in The Guardian this week, finally, to the matter of freedom of speech, there's no question that the current leadership believe in this. However, there's always a but, isn't there? The Society has a remit to be a voice for literature, not to present itself as the voice of its 700 fellows, surely a dangerous and untenable concept. It cannot take sides in writers' controversies and issues, but must remain impartial. And Salman Rushdie brilliantly responded on Twitter saying, just wondering if the Royal Society of Literature is impartial about attempted murder, asking for a friend. Yeah, Josh, I think Salman Rushdie nailed it there, really.
Yeah, I mean, taking sides against Islamic or any form of extremism and violence, it's totally insane.
I mean, you know, this Islamist extremist stabbed him multiple times, almost killed him, hospitalised him for writing a book.
Yeah.
If the Royal Society of Literature can't make a statement about that, what are they good for?
Well, exactly. What are they good for? And they're also there to celebrate excellence. And my understanding is that traditionally you have to have written 2 seminal books.
Yes.
So you're in there.
Thank you very much.
And
yeah, they're not returning my calls for some reason.
And but now they're opening that up, and you don't even have to have written a book, or you can write one thing, and it doesn't have to be seminal. It's just if you're nominated.
Yeah.
So it's failing to meet that remit of celebrating excellence within literature, regardless of diversity.
Yes.
That shouldn't matter.
And what about Everasto's response? The idea that we have to remain impartial.
No, I mean it's cowardice. It's absolute cowardice. And if these institutions that represent, in this case, literature, can't take the most basic moral stance, then, as you say, what are they good for? But worse than that, they're actively doing harm.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's fair?
I had no idea that they existed, to be perfectly honest with you. So...
Oh, well, then you're not perhaps best placed to comment on this particular issue, are you?
I don't really read...
Everyone on this show is informed.
Yes.
Everyone is informed.
About something.
About something.
Yes.
Well, you have your areas of expertise, don't get me wrong.
No, that's true, actually, but I've not written a book.
No.
I couldn't be bothered. Is it a long process?
It is a long process. It takes a while.
OK. Did you cry a lot during it?
Well, it was arduous.
Yes.
It absolutely was, yeah. But don't worry, Bruce. We will come to your favourite topics in a moment.
Great.
Which is what? The B-sides of Danny Minogue, that kind of thing.
I want the grinder question.
Yeah, the grinder question's coming up, don't worry. OK, let's go to another question now from Stephen. Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
Hello. Should Tucker Carlson have interviewed Vladimir Putin?
This is fascinating, isn't it? And this went absolutely everywhere. I was on headliners while this interview was going out, so our viewing figures dipped a little bit. But this is... lots of people are saying Tucker Carlson shouldn't have interviewed Vladimir Putin because, you know, he's a tyrant. But I'm not so sure. What do you make of this? What do you think is the...
Yeah, I think you should. I think people should be open to listen to anybody. That's what free speech is all about.
Very interesting. OK. Well, look, I wonder, do we have a clip of this? If we do, it might be good to set that one up. Let's ask Josh first what he makes of this, because I think we can all agree Vladimir Putin, not the nicest of fellows.
No. Yes.
Should he be interviewed or not?
Yeah, he should be interviewed, but there's a difference between being interviewed, as in being asked tough questions, and then just being able to rattle off and sprout propaganda for 2 hours and not be challenged.
Well, this is it, Bruce. I mean, do you remember back in the day when they used to allow Jerry Adams on the BBC so long as they dubbed his voice with an actor?
Yes.
Now, I don't know what the point was that. I mean, that was just funny to me when they did that.
No, that was ridiculous. I can't help but think if it wasn't Tucker, they should have got Lorraine Kelly in, because I think, no, genuinely, and hear me out, she would leave no stone unturned. Actually, Andrew Neil would have been better.
Yes, I think Andrew Neil rather than Lorraine. God love her. But I don't know if
he does.
I don't know if she would have grilled him as much as...
No, I think she would have.
Really?
Yeah.
But do you think... I mean, who saw it?
Yeah, but about his outfit.
Well,
No.
Do you think... I don't know if you saw anything...
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, well, I gave up halfway through the history of Russia.
So do you think there was not enough pushback, I suppose?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that is my issue. And there are questions as to Tucker's personal politics in that way. And really, the point of a journalist isn't, and look, here you are, you're going to interview people later, and I'm sure that you're going to interview people that you agree with. But I bet you're going to ask them some questions that give the counter-narrative.
Yes, of course. And the trouble is, I'm always inviting people on this show who I don't agree with, but they just refuse to appear.
Yeah.
So I don't get the opportunity to do my kind of, interrogate, kind of Jeremy Paxman thing, which I really want to do. I want to ask a politician the same question 18 times.
OK.
Get no answer. That's what I want.
Right.
But they won't agree to appear. You know why? Because they're intimidated, Bruce. Because that's... No.
I feel you're being intimidated to me, and I don't like that scary look in your eyes. You have to back off.
All right, I will back off, Bruce. I apologise for that. Oh, sorry. I've had too much Ovaltine. Anyway, next question from Alan now. Where's Alan? Hi, Alan.
So, was the Prime Minister insensitive when he attacked Keir Starmer over his sort of gender and biological issues?
I know what you're talking about here. This happened earlier this week, and it was in Prime Minister's Question Time, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
And it's quite interesting here because obviously Sunak was taking Starmer to task for a number of U-turns and was giving a number of examples of where Starmer has U-turned on various things. And one of the things he mentioned was the fact that Starmer has U-turned on knowing what a woman is, which is true. So Starmer has U-turned on that. But Starmer then said, oh, this is outrageous because of the week where the killers of Brianna Ghey were convicted, and tried to make this connection between, I have to say, one of the most horrific murders I've heard of in recent years, just absolutely horrible. But I mean, what do you think, Alan? Was Starmer just avoiding questions in a quite unpleasant way there?
No, he had his own agenda, I think, and I think he misread the audience, and it's really not fair that he actually mentioned who was in the audience there.
No.
It's wrong on that side. But, gender ideology is something which we talk about too much. It shouldn't be mentioned so often in Parliament. It's really tragic what happened to that poor kid.
Yeah, of course.
But, this is one of the worst imports we've had from America, as well as ESG, DEI, critical race theory.
Yeah, but the problem is, Alan, if we don't talk about it, it'll take hold even further and cause even more problems. That's the issue, I mean, I think... And with this, I mean, I don't know what you think about this, Josh. It felt like... I think Starmer misjudged, but the impression was that it looked like he was weaponising the death of this poor individual.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But maybe that... I'm not saying that was the intention, but that's how it looked.
No, I believe that was the intention. And I think he was wrong, and I think he came off worse for it.
And you're saying this as a Starmer fan, or at least a Labour fan?
More of a Labour fan than Tories, yeah. And a fan of Starmer for some things. But this, I think that he absolutely showed himself up here, and it's a real shame. And the fact that it was cheap also, but necessary for Sunak to point out, and it wasn't flip-flopping that he's done in this case, in terms of what a woman... If you cannot define what a woman is, you're not fit to run the country. And it's not that he flip-flopped, it's just he sort of went, oh, 90%, and now it's 99.9%. No, it's 100% of women don't have a penis.
Yeah.
And until you can say that clearly, as a fact, you shouldn't be running this country.
OK, well, let's look at the clip. I think we've got that lined up.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber, shame, parading as a man of integrity when he's got absolutely no responsibility. Absolute. Of all.
Now, I do like to give people the benefit of the doubt, Bruce. Is it not possible that he just misjudged that, or maybe he genuinely thought Sunak knew that the parents of this kid were in the room?
But would Sunak not have known that the mother was...
No idea?
No, neither do I. I didn't... I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I just thought if Sunak did know that, why bring that up at all? And yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't think. Look, the thing is, what I would say, Bruce, is that if Sunak had even mentioned that case in relation to this or deliberately invoked it, I would have been the first to say that's appalling. What are you doing? I just don't see any evidence for that here. I don't think it's related.
Yeah, no, it's shame on Starmer for bringing it in. He saw an opportunity, but Starmer left himself open by saying that in the first place. Of course, Starmer's going to attack Keir and Starmer, and Sunak, Starmer, whoever. They're all the same.
Too many S's.
Yeah, very confusing.
Okay, well,
I don't even know who a woman is, let alone a Starmer is.
No. Well, that's why you vote Labour, isn't it? Basically. Okay, let's get a question from Annie now. Hi, Annie.
Would Minister be able to ban protest?
Interesting. We've had a conversation about this quite a lot on this show. This was the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. She's saying that ministers should be given the power to ban protests outright. Now, she sort of made some overtures about this in the past. Bruce, what do you think about that? I mean, I'm of the view... no, it's just a no. There's no way this should...
No, whether you agree... I mean, you either have to have a blanket ban on all protests, but you can't, I don't think, pick and choose. I think, you know...
But isn't a blanket ban on all protests kind of authoritarian?
Well, I don't have any problem with people being authoritarian. I'm quite authoritarian in my private life.
You are? I've
yes,
heard that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But what I mean genuinely is you can't pick and choose what you're going to, you know...
It's just so interesting because, you know, I've met Braverman in a personal capacity. She was very, very friendly and nice. But this strikes me as quite disturbing, actually.
It is disturbing, but like all the issues that we talk about, we're talking about different rights here. So there's the right for protest, and it's very dangerous to threaten that in any way. But then there is the right for Jewish people to be able to go into central London. Today, where I believe they're the... not the Natural History Museum, at the... oh,
well, it's every weekend.
Every weekend, but this weekend they're protesting a gallery. It's like I would feel unsafe to take my children out there. But what I would say is the laws as they are enough, and they're not being enforced, and you're seeing actual terrorist flags being paraded around this country.
That's a separate problem. See, my view is that what you have to do is actually deal with and apply the law when people are calling for violence or you know, as Hizb ut-Tahrir were shouting about jihad. And they're letting it go, and the police are doing nothing.
Yeah, and then worse than that, the police are gaslighting people, where they're going, "Hey, look at this Islamic flag," and the police are going, "No, we were told by the person who had the flag it wasn't Islam," and then it turns out it was from a prescribed organisation.
Couldn't agree more. My issue is if you you know, the price that we pay for living in a free society is that people are going to protest when we just don't agree fundamentally with what they stand for, and I think if we get rid of that, it's going to bite all.
No, I agree with you, but like I say, I feel unsafe going with my kids into town on a Saturday. And that's my rights.
Yeah, sure. But similarly, I would feel unsafe going into a parade where there are the Progress Pride flags being flown, which I see as a very much an anti-gay symbol. But I don't want those people to be stopped protesting. I want them to be able to do that.
Look,
I think it's really
I get what you're saying, but at least they could do is enforce the laws as they have them now, and they're not.
Very interesting. OK, but look, we're obviously going to be returning to these topics because these are going on and on. But look, next on Free Speech Nation, I'm absolutely thrilled that Professor Jo Phoenix is going to be here to tell us about her landmark legal win in a gender-critical discrimination case against the Open University. Please do not go anywhere.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Office. Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering on your priorities. So I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum on Monday the 12th of February, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you. The economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Towards the end of last month, an employment tribunal found that criminology professor Jo Phoenix was forced to quit her job at the Open University because it failed to protect her from harassment over her gender-critical beliefs. A judge ruled that the Open University had failed to support Jo Phoenix because of a fear of being seen to support gender-critical beliefs and fear of the pro-gender identity section of the university. Jo Phoenix started working at the university in 2013 and hoped to retire there, but quit in 2021 due to bullying and harassment. And I'm delighted to say Jo Phoenix joins me now. Welcome to the show. Well, I should say welcome back to the show because we've been here before, haven't we?
We have indeed.
And now, of course, the last time we spoke, you explained what happened in this, but a lot of people watching may not know. So what was the background to this case?
It's a story in two parts. Back in 2018, thereabouts, 2019, I gave a talk to Women's Place UK on why I felt that transgender individuals, male-bodied people who identify as trans, shouldn't be in a female prison, and that trans women are not women. That kicked off a kind of campaign, if you like, some actions of direct discrimination within my own department. At one point, I got told I wasn't allowed to talk about my research. And then 2 years later, in the summer of 2021, myself, Dr. John Pike, and a few others, Hannah Marston, at the university started the Open University Gender Critical Research Network. Very simple idea, just a group of academics getting together to talk about how, where, why, and in what ways sex matters. As soon as we did that, a complete storm of harassment was unleashed. Myself and the other colleagues in the OU GCRN were subject to a targeted campaign of harassment. This involved open letters, a petition. It ended up with 368 of my fellow employees from the university signing a petition asking for the OU GCRN to be disaffiliated. Now, that means for us not to do our research.
And smearing you as transphobic and hateful and bigoted.
And the whole lot. And these were phenomenal statements. Jo Phoenix is a TERF, gender-critical feminism is transphobic. There was one open letter that was placed on the OU website that said that we were responsible for or we were contributing to a climate in which trans people were being murdered and trans refugees were being burned in their beds.
Unbelievable stuff. And, of course, the Open University, I mean, people are chuckling because it's so unbelievable that anyone could think that of you. But the Open University were found that they had failed to protect you from harassment.
Yes.
But their initial reaction after the verdict wasn't great, was it?
No, it really, really wasn't. So on the day the verdict came out, it was a Monday, came out around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I tweeted about it being successful about 4 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, the Vice-Chancellor of the Open University put out a statement that said that they were disappointed in the outcome, that they were considering appealing, and that they were concerned for the welfare of myself and the other 18 witnesses that the OU called against me.
So, the people who were involved in your harassment, in other words. OK, but that, to be fair, that was... he went back on that, right?
He did. By Friday, the public statement was an unreserved apology to me and a statement that they had not quite understood the law on academic freedom. OK, well, you know, that's why I think this case is so significant, because I think it's obviously fantastic news for you, but also for academic freedom more broadly. Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask you is, one of the aspects of the judge's statement, the written statement, which I thought was amazing, was that the judge effectively said that a lot of the witnesses who were academics had not been rigorous. There was an implication they had not been truthful. You know, this idea that they were... there was an expectation, why can't academics behave better, was basically what the judge was saying.
The now famous paragraph 22 of the judgment, in which the judge and the panel said that they were aware they were interviewing people who were trained in the methodology of evidence and argument, but that many of the OU witnesses fell short of that standard.
Wow.
Right? But, and you know, you say about lying, I have never read a judgment before that has so many coded words for not telling the truth.
Yes. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
Now, I think this case could be particularly significant as well, because the go-to thing is for people to say anyone with gender-critical views, anyone who believes that sex is immutable and that it matters when it comes to the preservation of women's rights and gay rights, that those people are hateful, they're TERFs, they're transphobes. But the judge said that now, in your case, that's a slur.
Yes.
For the first time I've seen this.
Yes, yeah, and it's very, very important, because the argument that my harassers constantly made was that my gender-critical statements, if you like, were transphobic and harmful. And, as I say, everything that I had done, the judges had looked at, or the panel had looked at. They decided nothing I had said could be even remotely considered offensive. And they determined in one of the paragraphs that the use of the term transphobic, or TERF, was designed, A, as an insult, but more than anything else, to shut debate down.
Yeah, because you've never expressed any animosity towards trans-identifying people at all. I mean, this is...
No, and in fact, I've been at pains, and I think I was at pains the first time I came here to say I support trans rights.
But they've just ignored that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is quite incredible, isn't it? So maybe in future they'll stop throwing the word transphobe around, or I mean, actually...
I'd really like to say yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's an outcome, yes, hurrah. But no, because even within days of the judgment, people on Twitter who are academics, who read the judgment, were still using that term and are still using that term as a derogatory, pejorative term.
What's going on with academics? I don't understand why. Some of the most fierce debates I've had with people online, where they're the most truculent, where they're behaving like teenagers, they're professors of sociology in various departments.
Yeah.
You know, what's going on?
I mean, you know, if I was being uncharitable,
Yes.
I'd say that they have left their academic rigour behind in the service of politics. If I was being uncharitable, I might say it in a different way. If I'm being less than uncharitable, I'd say they're getting confused.
Right, OK.
About what their job is.
But hopefully this kind of judgment will help to set them straight. But maybe not, because one of the things that I think I'd like to ask you about is there were accusations at the Open University they were just being cowards. Not necessarily that they didn't know that you were being harassed, but that they were too afraid to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, it wasn't an accusation. In the closing summation of Ben Cooper, KC, who represented me, he tried to help the panel understand that what the university was suffering from was institutional cowardice. Now, the judges recognise, or the judge and the panel recognise that, and in the judgment what they said is where you have an organisation where the dominant view is a gender-affirming one, failure to make simple statements like gender-critical beliefs are protected leaves people such as myself open to harassment. And the judge and the panel were quite clear. The university failed to act through fear.
Do you think that... You see, something that astonishes me is the way that people just jump to transphobe or bigot or something like that. Do you think that had they approached you and said, you know, we're not sure about some of your views, let's have a conversation, that all of this could have been resolved very quickly?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I could go on, and in fact, you know, it's in the judgment. One of my harassers, I had reached out to that individual on several times,
yes.
but I was rebuffed, and you know, it was quite clear again from the judgment and to me at the time,
yes,
that there was no desire to have a discussion because my views were just seen as heterodox.
But you know, this took a great toll on your mental health and your well-being, and I understand all of that. And do you think these people understand that what they are doing is a form of bullying? I mean, why can they not express any kind of empathy towards their targets?
I don't know. And that was, you know, sitting in that courtroom for 3 weeks, listening to various people equivocate, tell less than truths and try and justify their behaviour. A lot of what they were saying was, but those views cause harm. But when pressed, well, what harm? Where's the evidence?
Yes.
There was nothing. And I don't know now, even if they read the judgment, if they realise that what they're doing is a form of bullying. Can I just come back to something? One of the really fascinating things about my judgment is people are saying this is a great win for academic freedom. I actually disagree. What it's a great win for is for universities to take seriously their policies on social media, on bullying and harassment. Because if the university had intervened at various points when I asked them to, we wouldn't actually be here. But they failed to do anything about the bullying. And they just said simply, well, an academic said it, therefore it's academic freedom.
So I want to ask you now, you're no longer with the Open University, obviously, but you are now with Reading University. How have they reacted?
Marvellously. Within hours of the judgment coming back, I must have had 40 congratulations, including from people in higher offices in the university. But I just want to end on a nice little story. On Friday, I was teaching a group of third-year law students and psychology students on a criminology course. There are about maybe 100 students in the room. As I walked in, many of the students congratulated me. At the end of the lecture, I had 20, 30 students who stayed behind to talk to me about the judgment. And one of them actually said, I heard you on Women's Hour. I really was moved by it. But more than anything else, you having this judgment makes me feel safer to voice my opinions in university.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations, Jo Phoenix, and thanks for joining me today. And next up on Free Speech Nation, we've got our lovely studio audience here, so we might as well make the most of them. They're going to have some more questions for myself and my comedian panellists. Don't go anywhere.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamon, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, Not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, and Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I've got this wonderful panel here. Well, I say wonderful. They're friends, Bruce Devlin and Josh Howie. And we're going to take some more questions from the audience. And our first question is from Omalo. Hi, Omalo.
Is diversity more important in the army than safety?
Is diversity more important than safety? Well, the army has... I mean, actually, this was a story this week in The Telegraph. The army is trying to relax their security checks because they want to boost diversity and inclusion. Well-intentioned, Josh? I mean, I suppose they want...
but then isn't there a saying about good intentions?
I think there might be.
Yeah, you get taken over by China.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is for people who weren't naturalised citizens.
Right.
And the idea is that they're saying that it's taking too long to do these security checks for people who've not lived here longer than 5 years. But there was a similar thing where... there's actually a big waiting list of people trying to get into the army.
Yes.
And they're saying that it's taking too long for them to check people's tattoos and various other physical elements. So this is slightly different. So there is a recruitment crisis. They could let those people in and shorten it down. Right. Because people then lose interest. But at the same time, of course, you have to focus on security.
I would have thought with the army, that's quite important.
Yeah, and this is specifically for, like, the officer class.
Right, OK.
So...
Okay.
Look,
but it is a recruitment issue. I mean, no one's joining the army, let's be honest.
Well, no, but that's the point. And this other story that was covered a few weeks ago, people are trying to join the army, but that part of the process, the physical part of the process, is taking 6+ months, and then people have to get jobs and move on with their life.
You know what the solution is, Josh?
Please.
Conscription. No, I mean, why not? I think there's something to it. I think if I had been forced into the army at the age of 18, I would be far more manly, and I think...
Would you?
No, probably not.
No, I don't think so at all.
It probably would have made things worse, to be honest.
I think you would have been in fatigues and court shoes and things like that, and a clutch.
Yes. But on the other hand, you know, I think people in power think twice about sending soldiers into conflict if one of them might be related to them, if it's their own offspring. You know, maybe there's something to conscription, I don't know.
I don't know, could they just recruit more people to do the checks?
Well, probably.
There.
Just do that.
Solved.
Great. Bruce has always got the answers. OK, let's get another question now from John. Hi, John.
There, yeah. Should airlines be weighing passengers?
Now, John, can I ask you about this? Because I know this is Finnair, right? This is a Finnish air thing. And do you think it's offensive to weigh a passenger, given that the weight of a passenger can affect how the flight basically goes?
Well, yeah, I mean, apart from there's an unfairness thing if the lighter passengers are paying the same price as the heavier passenger, but there's also the pilot has to work out the centre of gravity of the plane, so it's quite important.
Yeah, so I hear. Apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently if everyone runs to one side of the plane during a flight, it can cause it to spin. Don't do that, by the way. So that's the thing. But listen,
you're giving Al Qaeda some ideas.
That's terrible. But they'd have to book out the whole flight, though. Who's going to do that? Bruce, tell me what you think about this, because is it offensive if someone said to you, "We're going to have to weigh you to check how much that you have to pay"?
I love the way you came to me first. That's really kind. No, because if you think about it, you have to have your bags weighed.
You do,
don't you? So, and you're a commodity on the plane. I think the way it could be done, you know, you just say, "Come on, you big Teletubby on the scales." Yeah. I think you might have to go into an ante room or a prayer room. You could maybe line up some donuts and go, "Not for you. You're not allowed to." But No, I think it's all right. It's just the way that it's done.
Well, it's thin air. I was in Finland.
That's the irony.
Yeah.
It's thin air.
Well, I was in Finland recently. They strike me as very pragmatic as a race. And, you know, maybe this is just another form of that pragmatism. On the other hand, you know, I mean, I get the debates. You know, some people say, you know, particularly in America, where you have people who are so large that they take up 3 seats. And you think that's not really fair for the person who's getting crushed to death.
And as the seats are getting smaller and smaller as well. So, yeah, when it's not fair. But it could be a good way of, like, giving code to somebody that they put on a bit of weight over Christmas. It's like, maybe we should take a trip to Finland.
Actually, that's a really sensitive way to approach the problem of weight gain.
Or what they could do when the trolley comes round is say, nothing for you, but the person at target weight, they can have whatever.
I think that's the solution.
Yeah.
Bruce is full of ideas tonight. It's amazing. You should go on Dragon's Den. But let's get a question from Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, panel. Subject very close to my heart. Has Grindr become homophobic?
Has Grindr become homophobic? Well, no, this sounds mad. If you don't know what Grindr is, it's the app that you get on your phone where gay people can locate other gay people to the nearest foot using technology, satellite technology. It's the sort of thing that Jack Bauer might have if he was looking for gay sex. Anyway, so, but what they have are filters, so you can filter by age, and Grindr is now saying that you can't filter out people who are not male but identify as male. And so people are saying, well, isn't this kind of homophobic? What do you make of this one,
Well,
Josh?
There are 2 homosexuals very close, supposedly. I don't know where they are.
I wouldn't believe it.
I don't know.
But it's good to know you're on the app.
Yes, exactly.
It's important to have both sides.
Is it not the case, Josh, that, you know, I'm all against discrimination in all its forms, but sexual orientation is a form of discrimination, insofar as...
By necessity.
By necessity,
absolutely.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing. This whole movement, what got me interested was lesbians were being called bigots for not being attracted or sleeping with people who have penises.
Yeah, because they're lesbians.
Yeah, because they're lesbian, exactly. So, and this whole cotton ceiling and this disgusting, you know, thing about that. So, this is, that surely defines the whole... And there's a dating app, I think, in Australia, Giggle, I think, which also has a similar thing where they're being sued for not allowing...
That's Sal Grover's app, and the idea is that it's an app for women who are attracted to women, and the government's trying to say that's bigoted.
Yeah, exactly. So this is part of that, but obviously Grindr have just said... And there's hypocrisy here as well, of course, because they're saying, no, we're not going to say, like, you can't identify who is trans or who's cis or whatever, which I hate as a term. But you can identify as trans if you want to find another trans person. Like,
so there are those filters?
Yeah, there are those filters, they're saying, because they want everybody to feel welcome. But then it's not welcome for people who are attracted to the same sex.
This is so weird, because I speak to people who are on Grindr, and a lot of the guys say, well, I don't go on it anymore because it's full of women. And you think, well, that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Because gay men are attracted to other men. It's not rocket science. And sure, some will be attracted to women who identify as men. They're called bisexuals, and that's fine as well. But, like, why is this such a big deal? I don't understand why is... Do you think it's discriminatory to sort of say that you just want to sleep with men?
No, I think that's up to the individual. In the same way that you can search for someone based on their height, their preference in the bedroom for a horizontal refreshment, their weight, brings thin air in again.
I'm worried about where you're going to take this, Bruce.
No, but that's what I mean. There are a whole host of filters.
Yes, there are.
So if you can pick out that, well, why can't you say what you're into?
I'm looking for a gay man with big breasts.
Yeah. But it's just...
I've left.
It's just strange, though, isn't it, that Grindr put out that statement on their website, you know, because it sounds like they're trying to shame gay people for being gay. A little bit, which is weird coming from a gay app. But anyway, you know, we're in the age when Stonewall is trying to shame gay people, so, I mean, what do you expect? But anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be hearing about a new ad network designed to combat the belief that the big tech companies and media agencies who are suppressing free speech. Please, do not go anywhere. I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there. with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Ken, do you find the Union flag, the Union Jack, divisive?
In some situation, but as Simon quite clearly stated, and I agree with everything that he says in regards that there's situation when people use it for ulterior motive to cause fear, alarm and distress. We saw that with the far right when they came up to saying protecting the Churchill statues and things of that nature. But largely, on the large whole, even I wave the St. George's flag on a sporting occasion. And I don't see anything wrong in raising the Union Jack or the St. George's flag, so long as the intention is correct. And as he says, Mr. Brockhurst, he served for the country and he should have every right to be proud of what he's done and the way that he wants to display it.
All right, Simon, what do you make of this kind of, I would argue it as like student social media-based politics, where you get these pillocks from the Green Party or whatever saying, oh, it's divisive and I can't believe it. It will be legal in this country to do... Do those people need to get out more? I was on the streets of Stratford earlier on, an incredibly diverse place, speaking to a massive range of people right across different age demographics. I couldn't find a single sausage who said to me that they thought that this guy from the Green Party was right.
He obviously has absolutely no attention from anybody, and this is his way of finding attention. Both Ken and myself, we both agree that nobody should use any symbol of national identity to offend others deliberately, because that's just inflaming a situation. There's so much sensitivity around so many things today, and people do get offended by so much so quickly without any rhyme or reason.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Uncommon Ad Space is an ad network which is designed to connect brands and advertisers with independent content creators and alternative media outlets. Its creators believe there is collusion among big tech companies and media agencies to suppress free speech and prevent content creators who operate outside the mainstream from raising advertising revenue. Lee Taylor, the managing director of marketing agency Uncommon Sense, is the man behind this. He joins me now alongside Toby Young from the Free Speech Union. Yeah. Toby, do you want to tell us why such a measure is needed in these times?
Yeah, so I publish, in addition to running the Free Speech Union, I publish this alternative news publishing site called The Daily Skeptic. And it's really, really difficult to get advertising, to get anyone to advertise on it, even though we get about 1.5 million page views per month. So it's huge. It rivals mainstream media publications. Lots of people read it. It's read by MPs. But we can't get any advertising. Why? Because there are these various agencies. They describe themselves as advertising ratings agencies, and what they say to advertisers is, don't advertise on this site. It's toxic. It spreads misinformation and disinformation, by which they mean anything that challenges the mainstream narrative. Yes. If you challenge the regime, you're going to get designated as an unsafe space for advertisers to place their products in. So I'm finding it, even though it's a huge success, hugely popular, I can't get almost any advertising at all because of the dominance. And these agencies are funded by the State Department in the US Department of Defense, by our own Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I'm talking about agencies like the Global Disinformation Index, NewsGuard. What they do is they stop anyone giving money, any advertisers giving money to sites like Spiked, like Zero Hedge. Even GBNews has been successfully boycotted by some of these. They're basically the organs of the censorship industrial complex, trying to strangle alternative news publishers because they're threatened by the challenge they pose to the mainstream narrative.
And isn't it strangely that we have these bodies, these agencies that have so much power when really they are clearly motivated from a particular ideological standpoint?
Completely. It certainly feels like they've been captured ideologically, and they're all following the same narrative. I mean, the Daily Sceptic, it produces, information about the weather. I mean, is that really hate speech? Is that really something that you wouldn't want to be associated with as an advertiser?
So when did you come up with this idea, and how did you think about implementing it?
So, probably about 10 years ago, I've seen changes in the advertising world, and then certainly over the last 6, the alternative media, the new mediascape has blown up. It's got really huge. So I was confused as why advertisers weren't migrating their advertising spend over here. And then, as Toby said, actually, not only were they not advertising and spending, they're being censored. So I had to make this my problem. Now, I could sit and complain about it, but actually I needed to find a solution. So to start with, I thought, why don't I go and glue myself to some work of art? That didn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Weird, that, isn't it?
Strange.
Yeah.
So actually, I thought there's got to be a better way. Why don't we make this into an opportunity? And actually, so we set up a network, and what our platform does is it provides a conduit between businesses and and publishers, so they can advertise on the new media publishing place.
That's great. Toby, I want to ask you about this, though, because there are activist groups, such as Hope Not Hate and people like this, who will smear people like Spiked or GB News or whatever, or the Daily Sceptic as, wrong-uns, basically, and then effectively intimidate people from advertising, scare the advertisers away. How can you deal with that? It's all very well tackling the agencies, but what about those activist groups?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I think you have to expose the fact that when they attack you for publishing misinformation or disinformation or hate speech, and when they try and get laws passed in parliaments, like the law that's going through the Irish Parliament, there's another one heading towards us in the Northern Irish Parliament, and now that that's about to get up and running. There's one in Australia, one in New Zealand. It's extraordinary, the power and influence of these activist groups trying to throttle alternative news publishing sites. And I think the one way to tackle it is to say to them, we're not really publishing misinformation or disinformation. Saying that you don't think trans women are women isn't really hate speech, is it? You just disapprove of what I'm producing. You just don't share my politics, and you're dressing that up as, you're publishing false and misleading information. But if you can show who they're funded by, what their agenda is, the previous activist groups they've been involved with, I think you can gradually denude them of their power and their influence. And, it's not, as far as persuading people not to go to sites like the Daily Sceptic or Zero Hedge or Spiked or watch GB News, it's not successful. The public are voting with their eyeballs.
And that's the thing. So this people can be exposed in this way. These activists, they're not telling the truth. So what's been the response?
The response has been great. So we went live probably about 3-4 weeks ago now, and I've had a number of people come on to say, we didn't even know this was a problem. We want to jump. How can we advertise on these networks? We didn't even know we could.
Yeah.
We've been blocked for in the past. We've had letters of support saying what you're doing is fantastic because we're actually giving access to businesses direct to this new media. We've had a few people say, actually, you shouldn't really be doing this, but we've ignored those.
Yeah, good idea.
The response has been great. We've also had publishers come on, like the Conservative woman, to say, we've been banned as well. Can you help us out with advertising? So the response has been amazing.
Finally, what's the website? Where can people find more?
It's called uncommonAdspace.com.
That's fantastic. And Toby, you've got a live event, I believe, coming up soon.
Yes, so me and GB News' very own Nick Dixon on Headliners several times a week. We do a weekly podcast called The Weekly Sceptic, and we're doing a live show at the Hippodrome just off Leicester Square tomorrow. And if you want to buy a ticket, go to our new podcasting platform, basedmedia.org, click on events, and you can get a ticket for only £25. Where else can you see a West End show, a 2-hour show with the hilarious stand-up comedian Nick Dixon for just £25? It's a bargain.
And you're quite the showman yourself, Toby. I mean, I think you're doing yourself down. So.
Well, it's a good show. We've done it twice before. Audiences love it. It's going to be a great occasion, I think, a great night.
That's fantastic. Just very quickly, what will you be covering? What kind of things will you be talking about?
We'll be talking about Lindsay Smith getting banned by Newcastle Football Club. We might talk about Joe Phoenix's incredible victory and her courage in standing up to the Open University. We'll talk about the armed forces becoming increasingly woke and finding it hard to recruit heterosexual white men because they're just not welcome in the armed forces anymore. A lot of stuff to cover, Andrew.
Fantastic. Toby and Lee, thank you both very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And there's loads more to come on Free Speech Nation, including Joan Smith on Labour's position on gender ideology. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. The next few days, the theme really is clear spells and showers around, and we have that really as we end Sunday as well. Showers pushing their way in from the west, quite frequent for some western districts. Some clearer spells, though, further towards the east, and a much drier night overall, though, for the far northeast here in Shetland. It is going to be a much wetter one with that band of rain sweeping through. Underneath some of those clear spells, though, temperatures will just drop off a bit. Low single figures for many of us, and patchy frost is possible first thing on Monday morning. Maybe some icy stretches as well, where we do have those showers around. We will continue to see those showers pushing their way in. They will be most frequent and heaviest for northwestern areas. Some quite blustery winds around here at times also, but generally further east and south, you'll more likely stay dry throughout the day with a decent number of sunny spells in there as well. A relatively pleasant start to the new week. Temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius is pretty much where we'd expect them to be for this time in the year. On Tuesday, got an area of low pressure just to the north that will again bring some very breezy, blustery showers for Scotland, but a ridge of high pressure allows for a drier, finer start for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, with some sunny spells once again. But we will start to see the cloud thickening up from the southwest, with outbreaks of rain eventually arriving, turning breezier as well. But in amongst all of this, we have milder air sweeping its way in, so temperatures will be on the rise as we head towards the middle part of the week, seeing mid-teens for some of us as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
What you've got to do is, it's a collective. You've got to look like a meteorologist. Nobody out there is necessarily going to be a meteorologist, but what I do on a daily basis is I look globally. I look at what we've got in terms of the track of weather that we've had in the UK. So if you go back a couple of years and we go back to the heat wave of July, August 2022, 40.3 degrees, there's a dot in the landscape, and before then there was other incidents going on. Now that was a huge dot because that was extreme temperatures, and then we, since then, last summer, although we didn't get that kind of record, we saw months with records, various months, May and June and September and October, all-time records. So another dot, and then you're looking again globally. What's going on globally? What's going on in China, in USA, in Africa, now in Australia, for example, records falling like 9 pins. So when these storms come along, you've got to say, okay, would they have happened anyway? The answer is probably yes. They probably would have done. But when you start getting where we're up to with Jocelyn is number 10, then that's not the record. The record is 11 named storms, 2015-16. So we've been there before, but only a few years ago. So these things are starting to mount up. And do you know what? On the can of climate change, climatologists, better people than me, people who study this expertly, and they look at it and they say, okay, what we're going to get with extra dimension of heat in the atmosphere, which energy and heat that basically means that you've got more intense storms potentially that can carry more water. What do you get? You get higher wind velocities and you get more water and or snow. We've just gone through a period where parts of this country have been deluged and flooded for the first time.
Yes. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation tonight, including Joan Smith on Labour's position on gender ideology, Shara Ali on his victory over the Green Party, and more questions from this wonderful studio audience. But first, let's get a news update from Sam Francis.
Andrew, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 8 o'clock. I was about to say 7. We start with the rising tensions in Israel and Gaza as warnings against a planned Israeli invasion of the southern Gazan city of Rafah intensify. Ministers here in the UK have called it potentially catastrophic for civilians. It follows a call this evening between the US President and the Israeli Prime Minister, with Joe Biden calling for a halt to that planned invasion. He said it shouldn't go ahead without a credible plan in place to protect the 1 million people seeking shelter there. However, the Israeli Prime Minister has told reporters enough of the 132 remaining hostages are alive to warrant that ground invasion. Earlier, tanks and bulldozers were seen operating along that Gaza border with Israel, and it comes after at least 44 people, including several children, died yesterday in what the Palestinians have claimed were Israeli airstrikes. Back here in the UK, the family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey have held a vigil this afternoon to mark the first anniversary of her death. Earlier, I spoke to our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, who was there at the gathering.
Well, 1 year on from the tragic death of Brianna Ghey, hundreds of people have gathered here in Warrington for a vigil in her memory. We heard from several of Brianna's friends who spoke, bringing tears to the eyes of the crowd as they remembered their friend. We also heard from the head teacher at Brianna's school. We finally heard from Brianna's mother, Esther, who spoke emotionally and emotively about the loss of her daughter. Here's what she had to say.
Brianna was an amazing, unique and joyful teenager. I will be forever thankful that I was lucky enough to spend 16 years with her. She taught me so much and gave me so much happiness and love. If there's one piece of advice that I can give to any parent, it would be to hug your children tight and never stop telling them that you love them.
And I just want to bring you some breaking news that we've received in the last hour or so. That 4 boys, aged between 12 and 14, we understand, have been arrested in Rochdale on suspicion of raping a young girl. The alleged incident took place in the Newbold area of Rochdale. Police say the victim is currently being supported by specialist officers. A spokesperson for Greater Manchester Police said officers were called at about 6 o'clock on Saturday evening to reports of a sexual assault in the area. The suspects, we understand, are 12, 13 and 2 14-year-olds. They're now in custody. A crime scene remains in place and officers are continuing that investigation. The government is set to block bonuses paid to water bosses whose firms pollute rivers, lakes and seas. The move comes after public anger in recent weeks at bosses pocketing more than £26 million in bonuses, benefits and incentives over the last 4 years. The proposed ban by the regulator Ofwat could apply to all CEOs and executive board members. As we've been hearing today, 124 migrants crossed the English Channel yesterday on 3 small boats, according to new figures from the Home Office. The latest arrivals now bring the total this year so far to just over 1,500. That's down, though, from the just over 2,000 at the same time last year, but up on the figure from 2022. Apart from the latest crossings, small boats had not been intercepted since the end of January. The Prime Minister, you'll remember, has made stopping the boats a key pledge of his leadership as the country prepares for the general election. And finally, the King this morning attended church in Sandringham for the first time since his recent cancer diagnosis. His Majesty was seen walking alongside Queen Camilla. That's after last night he thanked the nation for their overwhelming support in his first public message since his diagnosis. The monarch said such kind thoughts from the public are of great comfort to him and encouragement. Buckingham Palace have said that he is facing a form of cancer, though they say it's unrelated to his recent prostate treatment. And for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. We've got a lovely studio audience here tonight. Let's get some more questions. Our first question in this section comes from Daniel. Where's Daniel? Hello, and
Hi,
brother.
Andy. Hi, Andy.
Of course.
So my question is the countryside racist?
I love the way you're finishing each other's questions now. It's great. Well, so wildlife charities are saying that the British countryside is a racist, colonial, white space, and then there's barriers preventing ethnic minorities from accessing the countryside. This is Wildlife and Countryside UK. It's a charity umbrella group whose members include various major wildlife charities. They've made these claims in evidence to Parliament. And, Josh, we do keep getting these stories about the countryside is racist. I've heard this quite a lot. Is it?
Well, if you even read the article, you read the report that it's based on.
Yes.
It's just a lot of like, well, colonialism's bad, and there's no. It doesn't actually get down to any examples of what might be.
How does that relate to
racism? Well, they're saying like it's almost like they're saying the idea of the countryside is racist, and that's what would put people off going to the country.
Sorry, you're going to have to join the dots for me there. So is it like if there's too many...
mental people out there.
If there's too many hedgehogs in a particular meadow, they connect that to colonialism, or
yeah, that's the gist. I mean, look, it's crazy stuff, and it's saying like the idea of this space is white, and that would put off ethnic minorities going out there, which of course is racist to ethnic minorities. Say, oh, that would be a barrier somehow.
Can't ethnic minority people go into the countryside?
I hope they do. When I read it, I fully expected cows to be shouting racial slurs and all that kind of stuff, because I was like, even for me, this doesn't make any sense. But I think it is to do with the fact that, you know, if you have a country pile, then you're up here or people are down there or all that kind of stuff.
They're not talking about that, aren't they? They're talking about like the countryside that anyone can access.
No, exactly.
I saw an article in the Pink News a couple of years ago talking about how about queer hiking groups, saying that the countryside is not an inclusive space for LGBT people.
Why?
Well, I don't know.
I know so many gay men that love the outdoors.
I just don't know what these people are talking about. Anyway, let's move on to a question from Ian. Where's Ian? Hello.
Is Liz Truss the right person to save the West?
Oh, it's such a dramatic question, Ian. Are you a Liz Truss fan?
As a default position, I have to say no.
You're not? OK. No. Well, God love her. What she's done now is she's written a book. It's been announced. It's called 10 Years to Save the West, and it's subtitled Lessons from the Only Conservative in the Room. There she is. This book is going to argue, apparently, that the rise of authoritarianism around the world and the adoption of fashionable ideas propagated by the global left gave us barely a decade to preserve the economic and cultural freedom and institutions that the West holds so dear. You a fan of Liz?
No.
No?
No. And I don't believe that she wrote this. I think someone else has written it for her. And I think she's actually got a cheek bringing a book out, in all honesty.
You think it's ghost-written?
Yeah, I do.
I think she's a smart woman. She could...
Is she?
Yeah.
Smart enough to tank the economy, yeah.
Oh, cool. Now it's going to get controversial. Do you think that's a fair assessment that Bruce just gave?
Yeah, well, I think she wrote it. But I think what's funny is that she's had to sort of pad it out with these other ideas, because it's meant, you know, the Prime Minister finishes their time in power and then they get a book deal about their huge... You know, if she actually just wrote it about her premiership, it would be about 3 pages long.
Yes.
So she's had to sort of bolster it with this idea.
You know, third female Prime Minister, that is no... mean feat. That's a bit... She's achieved a lot. I mean, I know she didn't last very long in the role, but you can't really do her down for actually getting there in the first place. It's more than I've done.
Yeah, but you can, yeah. You absolutely can, yeah.
OK.
She wasn't elected in. I mean, she wasn't elected in by this country.
I see what you mean.
You know, it was a Conservative...
But do you not think a little bit that when it came to that economic problem, you know, a lot of the markets got spooked, but on the other hand, was that her fault? I mean, the idea wasn't bad, was it?
I think the idea was bad. And was she not told by our now Prime Minister that you shouldn't be going ahead with that? That was him when he was Chancellor, saying this doesn't actually make any sense, and it didn't.
Well, OK.
It lost the country billions. Saying that, I do believe we do probably have about 10 years to save the West, so it's a good title.
It is a good title.
I just don't think that some of the issues that seem, just from what I've read on the blurb, it's not an economic. I think we're talking about cultural issues.
Well, fair enough. I'm going to be the only one to defend Liz Truss here, but I think, like... Well, I'm just saying we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And actually, I quite like the cover. It's very dramatic.
Is she on the cover?
She's on the cover. She looks great. It's dramatic. The title's great.
OK.
What's not to love? And I bet it's an interesting read. I, for one, will be reading it. Anyway, let's move on to a question now from George Jack. Hi, George.
Good evening, Andrew. Why is it wrong for a leader to change his opinion
in the face of new information?
Oh, age-old question, but absolutely pertinent. Sir Keir Starmer has dropped the £28 billion green investment package, and Starmer says the pledge isn't affordable anymore. But, Josh, now look, I keep coming to you on Labour questions because you are a Labour voter. Isn't it the case... Traditionally.
Yeah.
But is it not the case that Labour, well, Starmer in particular, does U-turn quite a lot?
Well, that's what his critics will say, but arguably having new information, changing your mind, that is a sign of intellect, and arguably also part of the reason that we're in the situation we are culturally in this country is because people aren't changing their minds and they're reading a tiny bit of information and going, this is it, this is what my tribe think, and I'm not going to change my mind. And
I think so. I mean, George makes a good point in a way that you know, when you are presented with new information, the adult thing to do is to change it. But if you are the shadow leader, it looks like you're not sticking to your principles, or that you don't have principles.
Or does it look that you are principled because you've obviously done the maths and it doesn't make any sense? I watched, was it Wes Streeting?
Yes.
I always get him confused with whoever Wes was that was Freddy Krueger, but anyway, that's another story.
Wes Craven.
Well, Wes Craven,
Yeah.
right, John Craven's Newsround, right. So, but the point is that why he came up with it thinking that he could afford it anyway, or whoever did, it seemed a bit ridiculous, but I don't have any problem. I actually think it shows a bit of integrity, because it's like, well, we're not going to push
is it because of conviction? Is it because of new information, or is it because it's polled badly?
Well,
and that's my issue. And that is the problem. So there is an idea there. And I will say, in terms of flip-flopping or inconsistencies, there was a disgusting thing in Labour. There's by-election coming up in Rochdale, and this person came up with the Labour candidate came up with this insane conspiracy theory that Israel deliberately wanted the attack to happen on October 7th, whatever. And this person's been allowed to sort of apologise and still stay in power. Now,
I thought the Labour Party dealt with these kind of issues.
Well, they have been since Keir Starmer has taken over, but this is an inconsistency. This is a flip-flop because someone is delving in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and when it comes to, you know, I know it's too late now to get a new candidate, but first of all, they should have immediately highlighted this person. But secondly, now they would be a lot. Maybe they would lose this election because they wouldn't have anyone standing if they pulled him. Yeah. But at the same time, this would show the rest of the country Labour's safe in terms of dealing with these kind of people inside the party.
It is difficult, isn't it? I mean, is there a way, Bruce, for a leader to change his mind or her mind and not be accused of flip-flopping? You're a flip-flop expert, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm a very definite person, but...
Okay, no, but I thought I meant the footwear.
No, I've got funny feet. No.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. But, interestingly, though, friends of mine, they have the European director of Havaianas flip-flops staying with them.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, honestly. This in Royal Dock.
You see how the stars align?
I know. It's unbelievable.
Incredible. But actually, quickly, Josh, on that issue of anti-Semitism, you mentioned something to me in the break which I found quite astonishing about Yes Minister. Do you want to tell us what this is?
This hasn't blown up at all, but someone was looking for Yes Prime Minister, and it goes episode...
The old
5,
sitcom, right?
The old sitcom, the seminal sitcom, one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. And it goes episode 5, and then this is on the BBC iPlayer and also on Sky, and it goes episode 5, and then it goes episode 7. And you can't get episode 6 because it's about Israel.
That is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
Have you verified this?
I've verified, yeah. And
what's going on there?
Well, let's watch this space. But
they do this all the time. So I was talking to John Cleese about this because there's an episode of Fawlty Towers, and if you watch it on the BBC streaming service, they've cut out a scene from the Germans, the episode of the Germans, because there's a racial slur in the scene. But of course, the use of the slur is to attack and mock the person using it. So they're just like, I wish these streaming services would just leave stuff alone, because otherwise we just have to buy the old DVD box sets, don't we? Otherwise we're just not going to get the...
But to cut an entire episode, because it's problematic for mentioning Israel is
well, you know, we don't know, of course, why they've done it, but if that is the case, that's disturbing. OK, let's get another question now from Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Will you be boycotting the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
Debbie, I will, because I hate them. They are so long. Why does any film that's that bad need to be that long? Anyway, so fans of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise are threatening to boycott if Johnny Depp doesn't appear. So Depp's become known. Obviously, he plays Captain Jack Sparrow, but he was dropped by Disney because of the court case with Amber Heard. Fans aren't happy about this. Do you like the Pirates film?
No, it's not my bag.
Any of them?
No.
So I saw the first 2, I saw the first one, then I saw the second one. The second one was like 8 hours long.
Why?
I wasn't sure because nothing happened in it.
And did you watch it until the end?
Oh, I was in the cinema. I had to. I felt it would be rude.
Oh, I don't like the cinema. I think it's voluntary incarceration, and you pay for it. It's weird.
You do. It is weird. Yeah, but it was exhausting.
I love the first one. I thought the first one's a really good. It's just the first one's a good movie, and
It's based on a roller coaster.
Yeah, and they did a really good job, and they managed to turn a movie about a roller coaster into an entertaining film.
You like your games, don't you?
Whatever,
what about Johnny Depp not being in it though?
Yeah, well, the people they're talking about replacing is actually a really interesting story about female pirates and true female pirates, and what they would do is they would kill people and then they would reveal their breasts to go, ha, these just killed you, and
wow,
I'm all in. I don't care about Johnny Depp anymore.
I mean, that's kind of insane, isn't it? But it's great. Is that a true story?
True story.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. It reminds me a bit of, you know how, like, the Taliban, or ISIS get killed by female fighters, they fear they're going to go to hell because they find it so ashamed. So whenever there's female soldiers, these guys just run a mile. It's really funny.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean,
so,
that's great.
were the female pilots strapping the breasts down then for a complete kind of...
I don't know about the logistics, but I think that's probably what they did. Yeah. Wasn't Gina Davis in a really good female pirate?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Renée Harlin.
Renée Harlin directed. There we go. Anyway, I'm on a big Gina Davis kick at the moment. Recently rewatched Long Kiss Goodnight.
Oh, it's good.
Brilliant.
It's really hard to find, actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Great film.
OK, next question now from Maeve. Hi, Maeve.
Hi, bit of a blonde question, but should you be sued for tracking Taylor Swift's private jet?
What have you been doing, Maeve?
Not tracking Swift.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. So Taylor Swift's lawyers have sent a cease and desist letter to student Jack Sweeney, and he runs social media accounts which track the private planes that celebrities use and Swift uses. But she's been criticised for her use of private jets, although it's been reported that she purchases carbon credits, which offset the impact on the environment. What do you make of this one, Josh?
Yeah, so she had 2 jets and she sold one of them, which is really nice of her.
Do you know what? She's an environmental warrior.
She's just a warrior, full stop.
Yeah.
But she has... So the accusation is that this person's stalking her, and then he's like, no, I'm just pointing out people's hypocrisy and I'm only following the jets. Anyway...
But they're in the jets.
They are in the jets, but actually she took another jet owned by somebody else and this person followed her, so she's kind of outsmarted him and found out that he is stalking her, is the gist.
What do you think this counts as stalking, Bruce?
I am worried. Is she doing the Super Bowl tonight? Is that tonight? But when she's doing the Super Bowl, I'm worried
It
that
is
she...
tonight,
yeah, I'm worried that she gets soup thrown at her from Just Stop Oil.
Oh, you know, they would if they could.
No, they absolutely would. No, I thought this was Greta that was doing this. Yeah, I think it is stalking. Why are you bothered?
Well, I guess it's because they think that, you know, they shouldn't be lecturing everyone about the environment and then flying around in private jets.
Is she lecturing people about the environment, though? I haven't seen
They all are, aren't they?
Are
They're
they?
all at it.
Well, we don't know, is the truth.
We don't know, but like Kylie Jenner, she got into trouble because she was... I would do this if I had a plane. She was doing, like, 10-minute flights. I think that's hysterical. What? Yeah, she was, like, basically... A thing that you could do in the car, she was getting... Maybe it wasn't 10 minutes, but it was, like, you know, 20 minutes, and she was going in her plane.
I mean, that's indulgent, isn't it?
I would love that.
That's a bit like in that sitcom Bread, you know, where they used to drive just 5 metres down the
road.
road.
With the cone.
Yeah, I'm showing my age there. Anyway, next up on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be hearing from Ashara Ali, who was vindicated by a court last week as his legal battle with the Green Party came to an end. Don't go anywhere.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Office.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Former Deputy Leader of the Green Party, Dr. Shara Ali, has been vindicated by a court ruling which said he was discriminated against by the party due to his gender-critical views. The court found the party had failed to identify any misconduct and had therefore improperly dismissed Ali as a spokesman, and he was awarded £9,100 in damages. However, the ruling did uphold political parties' right to dismiss spokespeople whose views differ from party policy. I'm utterly thrilled to say that Dr. Shara Ali joins me now. Welcome to the show. So, firstly, obviously, congratulations. How do you feel?
Well, it was a long haul, wasn't it? I mean, you don't take a political party to court after having toiled over and campaigned for them for 20 years unless you've got a good reason to.
Right.
So there's nothing like justice, I have to say. And boy, does it really give you confidence in the British justice system, that they could see through the smoke and mirrors of the Green Party, all the character assassination I had to deal with for 5-6 days of trial, and they could see that I was, and the judge has made it very clear, the declaration that we asked for and sought is that I was subjected to unlawful discrimination on account of my gender-critical beliefs. And that's crucially important. I had the whole weight of politics on the left on my shoulders, I felt, because we wanted to lay down a marker, a legal marker. Up with this, we cannot put the hostile environment, I would say, the fanaticism at an all-time high in the Green Party, that rot had to be put a stop to.
And it's interesting because, you know, the judge said that political parties are allowed to expel people who don't follow the party line on certain policies, but I was never under the impression that this was a Green Party policy.
Well, I think, first off, we've had a slew of successful cases in the courts, particularly in the Employment Tribunal, since Forstetter. I think you had Joe Phoenix on earlier.
Yes.
You know, we've had very successful wins. The importance of politics is difficult to overstate. In politics, we expect to be able to have vigorous, rigorous debate. And as an advocate for free speech, I also didn't want the unintended consequence where, if you like, the judgment was too strong.
Yes, I understand.
It's very important, actually, that people should be able to even offend you, insult you, trade in insults.
In politics,
the judge,
right, yeah.
the judge, very astutely, I think, made sure that that was still possible. He was doing a balancing act, if you like, between certain articles in the European Convention of Human Rights enshrined in the Human Rights Act. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression and freedom of association. So he rightly put a very high bar, and he found that the Green Party still transgressed and discriminated against me. They produced no evidence for their allegations that I had breached the spokespeople's code of conduct. And the reason they didn't produce any evidence, because they never had any.
Yes.
And so they were caught out.
But like you say, ever since the Fostata case, the belief that there are two sexes, that those sexes are immutable, that's a protected belief in law. So this is a discrimination aspect, just as the party wouldn't be expected to discriminate against someone for being black or gay or something like that.
I think you might also wish to distinguish between the obligations upon an ordinary member to comply, if you like, with a political party's policies and that upon a spokesperson. And I freely admit, in fact, I signed the code of conduct on the understanding that were I to breach it, then there would be consequences. The fact is that those breaches were never identified, shown to me. Even in the court of law over 5 days, they had a second shot at it and they still couldn't do it. Because what's interesting, though, is the Green Party, I would call them a gender-critical party, because we've got policies on single-sex wards for women in hospitals to preserve patient dignity. We've got policies that no school children, no child should leave school without a proper medical understanding of reproduction. That is biological sex. That is not out of kilter with the common garden belief, which we commonly call gender critical.
So can I ask what the response has been from other members of your party? Because, you know, you say you've sued your own party. Yes. I can imagine a lot of people in the Green Party thinking, oh, he's a traitor, you know?
No, the opposite is the case. Those people who have put me and many others through this, we've got Alison Till, Emma Bateman, they are being persecuted. Alison Till, let's just take her. She was duly selected for Sheffield Central, which is a target ward in 2022, and she's been unable to campaign because of the disciplinary action. She's on a no-fault suspension. All these no-fault suspensions against gender-critical members have to stop. It's completely outrageous. The reaction has been denial, I have to say.
Oh,
I've been watching in a couple of days, you know, what the reaction has been from the Green Party. They're trying to minimise it. They're trying to claim that it's some kind of procedural error. It's not procedural. Justice isn't just an end. It's a means. We talk about the presumption of innocence. If I were to lock you up without even producing evidence and giving you a fair trial, do you think that is just a procedural error? No, as the judge himself called it, he called it procedural unfairness. It was unjust. And in the very act of disciplining me, they also demonstrated their discrimination. Because the reason, and this is important actually, not only was I hauled up before this confected process without any evidence, but in the very act of removing me as a spokesperson, they demonstrated their discrimination against me.
So what would you like to see happen now?
Well, let's put it like this. Can you imagine any political party where the leaders were co-responsible because they voted on an executive committee to remove somebody, that had been judged unlawful discrimination, in the words of the judge, and they would still be there? No. So let's do politics differently. So my challenge, not just to the membership, to take a grip of your party, to assert yourselves, you should be asking questions of the co-leaders who were at the executive committee that was responsible for unlawful discrimination. If they don't have the self-respect to resign, that they should be held to account. And as far as I'm concerned, there should be a new leadership election. A leadership election which has already been postponed, by the way.
Can I ask you finally, Shara, this is not just about the Green Party. No. There are problems with other parties. The SNP have these problems. Sinn Féin has these problems. What will the ramifications be more broadly?
Well, at the end of the day, what I said earlier is that we need to lay down a marker that discrimination, we wouldn't tolerate sex discrimination. Well, maybe you do in the Green Party, unfortunately. Race discrimination, religious belief discrimination. We mustn't tolerate gender-critical discrimination. It's a protected belief for a reason. There is no hierarchy of protected characteristics. And I've even heard it said, oh, this gives certain fanatics in the Green Party, I don't think there's any, call a spade, right? That it gives them a licence to discriminate against people because of this higher threshold. That is an extraordinary way of looking at this case. What every political party should be thinking is that, by God, we've got to make sure that we not only comply with the law, we make sure that we end the hostile environment that Rosie Duffield of this world, particularly on the left, have had to face for over a decade now. The parties should be thinking, how can I align my policies with the communal garden belief that is used to organise society and has been for centuries. Not how can I best get away with discriminating against people. That would be even more of a rabbit hole for this Green Party. So it's an opportunity. This is my gift to the Green Party, if you like. It's a wake-up call. It's a reality check. And let's get back things on track, because we've got a climate calamity. We have social justice, proper social justice, and women's rights and free speech as part of that. That would be the true Green position.
Shara Lee, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And next on Free Speech Nation after the break, how would a potential Labour government handle the conflict between women's rights and the demands of trans activists? Well, Joan Smith will be here to discuss precisely that.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yep.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering on your priorities. So I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum on Monday the 12th of February, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you. The economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. As discussed earlier, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer were arguing this week over the latter's definition of a woman. However, perhaps of more long-term significance, given that they are highly likely to become the next government, is Labour's overall position on gender ideology feasible? While gender-critical women's organisations claim they struggle to get meetings with Starmer and his top team, that doesn't appear to be the case for trans activists. Shadow Women and Equalities Minister Annalise Dodds tweeted a couple of weeks ago, "Together we'll ban conversion therapy, strengthen hate crime laws and tackle health inequalities." Novelist and columnist Joan Smith has been writing about this. I'm delighted to say she joins me now. Welcome to the show. I mentioned there the tweet from Annalise Dodds, but Keir Starmer himself at an event in Parliament on the 29th of January made the same claim about strengthening hate speech laws, about a ban on trans conversion therapy. So Labour has really expressed its position on this quite unequivocally, hasn't it?
Well, I think it has, because you're right. It's very hard for women's organisations to get time with Starmer. And Rosie Duffield, who, of course, has had a hell of a lot of harassment for her views, he hasn't spoken to her for 2.5 years, despite all the bullying and harassment that she's suffered. And, you know, being a gender-critical openly gender-critical woman in the House of Commons, is, if you're Labour, is very, very difficult. It's also very difficult in a lot of constituency Labour parties. Yet, you know, they have endless Starmer and Annalise Dodds. They have endless meetings with LGBT plus Labour, which is a lobby group within the party. They are one of the groups that continually call for Rosie Duffield to have the whip suspended and things like that. You know, they have meetings with Stonewall. They're friends with all of these people. And I think, you know, whatever Starmer says, and, you know, he has said through gritted teeth that a woman is an adult female. He can just bring himself to say it. But, you know, you judge him by the company he keeps and the policies they're adopting.
But you would have thought he would want to speak to all voices in this debate. I mean, there's so much evidence now that a ban on trans conversion therapy would effectively make gender paediatricians' jobs harder when it comes to talking to young people who are struggling with feelings of gender. And because so many of those young people end up growing up gay,
absolutely,
you know, you could say that a ban on trans conversion therapy is effectively endorsing a new form of gay conversion therapy.
Yes, I think it's a form of homophobia. And what the Labour Party have never said is, what is this trans conversion therapy and where is it taking place? You know, they're continually making promises to stop something without saying where it's happening and what its effects are, which is extraordinary. But I think there is an anxiety on the part of women who have continually, myself included, and I'm a member of the Labour Party, we've continually asked Starmer to call out misogyny and to say that, you know, believing in biology is not transphobic. It's a perfectly legitimate view. And I think I first wrote to him 3 years ago as a member of the party, and I've spoken to him, face to face. Still haven't had a reply.
Well, if Keir Starmer is watching, I would like to invite him onto the show, maybe to discuss this issue with Joan. I think that would be a fantastic thing.
That would be fantastic.
Because I would really want to know, and I know we can't read people's minds, but why won't he talk to people like you? Why on earth won't he talk to Rosie Duffield, who's one of his own MPs? Is it intimidation, maybe?
I think that he knows that there is quite a lot of youngish people in the Labour Party who have kind of swallowed this ideology. And, you know, we can see it in constituency parties where people, you know, continually propose motions condemning transphobia and saying that, you know, feminists are bigots and, you know, that we've got terrible views and so on. And I think he came into the Labour Party, came to be leader. He knew there was an anti-Semitism crisis in the party. I said this to him, to one of the letters I wrote to him, and he thought he'd have to deal with that. What he didn't recognise is that he has a misogyny crisis in the Labour Party, and he's absolutely not dealing with that.
No, well, of course, Rosie Duffield wasn't able to attend the party conference because of threats and the like, and you would have thought this is something he must deal with. But I want to ask you also, because I mentioned in the introduction about the PMQ's situation, where the insinuation that he made was that Rishi Sunak had made a comment connected to the horrific murder of Brianna Ghey. What did you make of all of that?
I thought it was an indication of just how debased our politics has become by gender ideology, because Starmer has a record of saying ridiculous things about gender, sex, women and so on, and he absolutely should be called out for it. to link it to the horrific murder of a teenager who was targeted by two very troubled teenagers with an obsession with cruelty and torture and death and murder, and then suggest that Sunak was in some way making a cheap joke. I thought that was actually a deflection from his own record. But it also shows how quickly anything that involves even tangentially the subject of transgenderism becomes very, very emotional, very heated. And there are people out there just looking all the time for anything they can accuse of transphobia.
Because I don't believe for a second that there's any member of the House who would have in any way thought that that murder wasn't an absolute atrocity, absolutely horrific. We're all human beings and we know how horrible that was. So surely Starmer must have known that Sunak wasn't invoking that, and it feels a bit opportunistic.
I thought it was exactly opportunistic, and I think it also tells you that he knows that he is vulnerable on this issue because he has said so many ridiculous things about sex and gender. You know, at one point he said only 0.1% of women have a penis. He said that it's wrong to say that only women have a cervix. I mean, this is all nonsense, absolute nonsense. It's not just him. I mean, David Lammy said he understood that that trans women don't have a cervix, but they can grow one. I mean, there is a kind
Really?
Yes.
I didn't hear that one.
Yes, oh yes.
Blimey.
Yes.
I mean, I did hear one politician say that people weren't born with a biological sex.
Oh yes, that was a Labour MP too.
That was a Labour Party member as well. So there is a problem, and you're outlining it very, very clearly. But I spoke earlier to Dr. Shawkat Ali from the Green Party, who has won his case, and the judge did determine that he was discriminated against for having gender-critical views within a political party.
Yes.
Will that have any ramifications maybe for Labour?
I think it's a warning to all of the political parties because, you know, the Lib Dems are as bad. I mean, Ed Davey has said that some women have a penis. Look at what's happened to the SNP. What's happened, I think, is a kind of ideological capture by identity politics, which politicians are afraid to stand up to. And it's absolutely remarkable that ideas that were accepted for thousands of years, you know, the idea that people are born with a sex, human beings are born with a sex and they can't change it. That was accepted until the late 20th century.
Yes.
And suddenly it becomes something that's, you know, you're accused of being a Nazi or a heretic for saying it.
So the point isn't that Ed Davey shouldn't be allowed to say there's no such thing as biological sex or whatever it is he said, but rather that other people should be able to give a counter view, I suppose.
Absolutely, and that we shouldn't actually, you know, the debate has to be less emotional and we should not be smeared for putting our point of view, because it's not us who's trying to stop, you know, trans organisations meeting or, you know, calling for people to lose their jobs, be sacked and so on. Our side has been actually incredibly clear about, you know, trans people have the same rights and protections as other people in this country, and that's absolutely right. But what they don't have is the right to, and they're people who advocate for them, they don't have the right to take over women's spaces and to tell women that we aren't real women and that, you know, that a man makes a better woman. I mean, this is nonsense.
Joan Smith, thanks ever so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Free Speech Nation, a guest storms off the GB News set, the farmers' protest steps up a gear, and a shocking case of dog napping. It's almost time for social sensation. See you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Look, you're a respected royal biographer, and there are so many people who are on the sort of royal gravy train, if you will, people who are making a career out of gossip and speculation. But yours very much built on confidence and sources and facts. And you don't offer an opinion that often inside your book. But when you do, I suppose, therefore, it carries a bit more weight. So when you say that the Sussexes are easily offended and, you know, effectively pretty prickly, what do you mean and what have you based that on?
Well, on numerous their riposte to any given situation in their books, in their TV interviews. And let's not forget, there have been a lot of TV interviews, 6-part Netflix drama, Spare. You see time and again that they feel that they feel resentful. They feel that, you know, something hasn't gone their way and that this is part of some sort of calculated campaign against them. And actually, I mean, when you've got a fast-moving story, I mean, for example, in my book, I go into those frantic hours after the death of the Queen, and everybody's trying to sort themselves out. And Harry writes in his book Spare how you know, no one will return his calls and he can't get through to anyone, and it's sort of it's just all a bit me, and actually the whole kind of royal machine, if you like, is a team effort. And I just think it's very sad because, you know, Harry and Meghan, they had such potential, and now when we do tend to hear from them, on a royal matter, it's just to say how miserable they were being royal, and that was, you know, they were royal for whatever it was, 600-700 days. They're post-royal now for over twice that time.
Can you envisage a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life?
I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, the push for diversity is seeing military bosses recruiting from overseas to hit targets. Our national security is becoming national insanity. In My Take a 10, young people have got nowhere to live and no hope. If we don't start building houses and fast, this country is finished. Plus Anne Widdecombe, John Sargent and my top pundits. We're live from 9.
Nation, it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral on the dreaded internet. So first up, we discussed the countryside possibly being racist earlier on in the show, but sadly it was probably not as entertaining as Iman Aitan's appearance on our breakfast show with Steve and Anne earlier today. Let's have a look at what happened.
People. Sorry, Gareth, I can't hear you.
There is no racism.
I can't hear him. You just heard me, and I can't hear him. Please speak a bit louder for me, please.
No, we're going to call a halt to this because this is getting out of order.
No, I did huffing and puffing in the background. But it's fun to... I tell you what we like to do on this channel is listen to other people and then try and absorb their points.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave now because I'm not going to let you speak on behalf of the whole entire channel because I've been doing. I'm going to. Yeah. Don't worry about that. It's a shame that it couldn't have finished a bit more cordial. It is, but it's clear where your alliances lie. Oh my God. Thank you very much, Anne and Stephen. That was great.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well,
pleasure. You won't be back, I can tell you that.
Goodness me, she was so rude. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, she was rude during the interview, not letting the guy speak, being really smug and patronising and condescending, and then she has a go at Anne Diamond, which, I'm sorry, should be a capital offence, right? Yeah. So what do you make of all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say, it's the rudeness of it, the entitlement of it, and let someone else make their point, and then you make your point, and that's how you have a debate.
I don't get it. What's wrong with listening to the other side?
Well, I've no idea.
Yeah, I know, but you're open for conversation.
I will always turn the other cheek, of course. What I would say is she had a lovely blouse on.
No, she looked fantastic.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Work.
But storming off...
It's a bit much.
It's a free world. You can storm off.
You're right. Anne Diamond is a national treasure.
Absolute national treasure.
Have some respect.
Have some respect, but also have respect to the other guest. I don't get it. I don't get it.
OK.
You know, but
and also it makes you look bad.
It honestly does.
That's true, actually.
OK, there he goes. You know, I'm so glad he's gone. He was whining.
Oh, I know.
Whining up a tree.
She's gone all Hollywood.
OK, so next up, we've got this video of farmers in France doing their version of a dirty protest. So, unless you couldn't see that quite, the farmers protesting by throwing manure, actually using a whacking great machine to project manure on government buildings Is that too far? I mean, you know...
Yeah, it's a health hazard.
It's a health hazard.
Yeah, because that was the thing you were always told as a child, don't go near dog faeces because you'll go blind.
Yes. Oh, sorry, it was a police station. Anyway. I must correct myself. It was a police station. But nevertheless, someone's going to have to clean that up.
But that's the whole thing. When they're always chipping away at buildings and they're spraying things and all that kind of stuff, someone has to clean it up. I completely agree with you.
This is the thing, because I completely support their right to protest. I think they're, you know, it's really important.
But that's a health hazard.
What about that? I mean, would you connect this to when, you know, when Just Stop Oil start throwing paint over everything and soup over everything? Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think that scene reminded me a bit of Back to the Future.
Yes. I know exactly the scene you mean.
Also, manure is very expensive.
It is expensive.
So that was primo manure.
Yes, although they're farmers, so they probably get a discount, don't they?
Yeah, fair enough.
Is the manure racist? Because that comes from the countryside.
Oh, yeah, well, probably. Probably. Let's just assume it is.
See, I've been listening to some of the show.
You have been paying some attention. Finally, when this little girl returned home without her dog, her parents probably didn't believe who took off with it. You see, dogs are unpredictable, and they can kidnap each other. Is this not the case, Bruce?
I don't know. What happens?
You're not a dog man, no.
No, I was, but she's dead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, for goodness sake.
You know, 3 weeks shy of her 17th birthday, but, you know, whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm so insensitive. What about you, Josh?
It's love.
It's love?
Love. They fell in love. They went on their honeymoon.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
I do want a dog.
Oh, do you?
Well, they're wonderful creatures, aren't they?
I had lunch with a corgi today.
Did you?
Yeah, not deliberately. It just happened to be a corgi under the table in the place I was eating.
They're nice corgis, aren't they?
They were very nice, and I'd said to the family, I said, am I able to give them some food? She went, no. And I was glad that I hadn't asked beforehand and given half my beef, because it was dry.
Oh, you'd already done it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, listen, I think we've got time to talk through one of your unfiltered dilemmas. Every week you email in with your problems, for which I am very grateful. And the first dilemma came in from Maggie. Maggie says, I felt like I was in the mood for a younger man, so decided to buy my husband wash-in hair dye, then added it to his shampoo without him knowing. He is raging. But now I've truly got myself that younger guy I've been dreaming about. Trust me, I'm not looking back. Did I do wrong?
Yes.
Well, no, but if she's saying that he looks better as a result, and that he probably wouldn't have done it himself because he couldn't be bothered...
Lack of consent, Andrew.
Oh, it's a consent
you can't have
issue.
it every which way, and she was in the mood for a younger man. Says a lot about her moral compass, doesn't it? All the years he'd supported her. I know the man.
You do know?
Yes, it's Cliff Richard. He's very angry. No, I hate men with dyed hair.
Really?
Yeah. If it's bleached, it's fine, but you know when...
Yeah, but that's not the point. Like you say, the point is that he didn't consent to it.
No, he didn't.
What do you think of this, Josh?
I dye my hair.
Do you?
You dye your beard as well. Your beard looks fantastic.
My beard, but actually, what I hadn't focused on was that you put it... That's a really good idea. Put it in the hair, and then you get full pubes. Get the full...
Let's not go into those kind of details.
And you were worried about me earlier.
No.
How rude.
You're the one I'm normally worried about, Bruce, but this week it's...
outrageous.
It's Josh Howie, but I think...
I've got white bomb hair.
Josh Howie!
Get off Grindr.
Can you please behave?
Yeah, if you want to find my profile on Grindr, that's
okay,
the one to look out
I'm
for.
definitely moving on. I'm moving on. I've got to get this in hand. There is now another dilemma from Pamela. Thank you, Pamela, for emailing in. Pamela says, my friend was meant to come down to London for my 30th, but mysteriously fell ill at the airport. I think that is rubbish, and she couldn't be bothered. Should I ask her to see her boarding pass? Or does that risk the friendship? I think ultimately when it comes to friendship, you have to trust, don't you?
Yeah.
And you have to let your friends lie.
Yeah.
Like if they...
Well, Pamela's lying because it was her 40th.
Ah, there we go.
So I don't think she has the moral high ground at all. A boarding pass. What is she in, GT3?
How would you even ask that question? You know, because that doesn't that jeopardise the friendship once you're asking those kind of questions?
I think the bigger question is this a real question? Because I don't think anyone wants to look at anyone's boarding pass.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I think people who work for the airline do.
No,
yeah,
they do.
But not in a social setting like that.
We do have time, I think, for one more dilemma. This came in from Harold, which is a name I really like, and I think more people ought to be called Harold. Anyway, bit of an awkward one.
Particularly doctors.
Doctors should be called Harold. Oh, Bruce Devlin. I'm having an affair with a younger woman. Now she's pregnant, and I think I'm the father. How do I sensitively tell my wife? I mean, that would be a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if people are reasonable and if you're in love, you can get beyond it.
I would message her on Grindr and see what she said.
I would use that ticket and fly up to Edinburgh.
With the boarding pass.
Is there a way, Josh? Is there any way that you could, restore the trust in this relationship?
I fell over
Repeatedly.
I'm not asking you to come up with an excuse like that, Shaggy.
I was dyeing my pubes and I fell over. And then the rest is history.
So what should he do? Should he tell her? Firstly, should he say something?
No, he should leave the country and leave them both.
Yeah.
To find out.
Just leave a Dear John letter.
Take his own death. Get a canoe.
Should he not just wait until the baby's born?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then do what with it?
I don't know.
Just
see what it looks like. Because if he doesn't like the look of it, then he doesn't have to lay claim to it.
Is that how it works?
I don't know.
Maybe this, you know what? He might actually, his wife could be a big fan of the show.
Yes.
And this is the way that he's telling her, and you've just broken the news. And she's probably going, oh, look, isn't that a funny story? And then he's like, there.
I see what you've done there, Harold. You see, I'm very useful in this way. I'm putting out fires all over the place. Now, thank you so much, by the way, for joining us for Free Speech Nation this week. And this was the week when the Green Party lost in the courts, the Royal Society of Literature failed to support free speech, and Liz Truss announced that she would save the West. Go for it, Liz. Thank you to my panel, Bruce Devlin and Josh Howie, and to all of my guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our audience, you can easily do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. Come along. No matter what your opinions, I want to hear them all. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up next. Don't forget, Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock, including tonight. That's the late night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. See you next week.